Imagine waking up in a world where almost everything wants you dead. The air burns with volcanic dust. The ground trembles with predators heavier than trucks. The horizon glows red, not from sunrise, but from fire spilling out of the earth itself. You are Homo habilis, the handy man, one of the first beings to shape stone into tools. You stand barely 1.2 meters tall, weighing about 32 kilograms, the size of a modern child. Your brain is small, only 500 to 687 cubic centimeters, less than half that of future humans like Homo erectus. You don't know it yet, but your kind will never grow old. Most of your people die before the age of 10. Those who survive that long rarely live past 12. You live in constant fear of hunger, of disease, of something moving in the tall grass. The rivers hide Crocodilus anthropophagus, the human eater, a crocodile over 7 meters long. The plains belong to Macaridus kabir, a 400-kilogram saber-tooth cat that kills with a single leap. And when the night falls, the laughter of Pachyrhocutta brevirostris, the bone-crushing hyena, echoes across the Rift Valley. This was not the dawn of humanity. This was its trial by fire. In 1960, deep within Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge, British paleoanthropologists Lewis and Mary Leakey unearthed something extraordinary. Fragments of a skull, a jaw, and delicate hand bones still curled around shards of stone. Among them was a fossil that would change everything. Specimen OH7, the skeleton that defined Homo habilis, the first true maker of tools. At first glance it seemed fragile, almost childlike, but under the microscope, the bones told a violent story. The skull was fractured. The leg and foot bore broad puncture marks that matched the teeth of a giant crocodile. Across the crown, shallow gouges traced the bite of a leopard-sized cat. Even in death, the handy man was caught between predators, dragged from the water, mauled on land, consumed by a world that never stopped devouring its own. The Leakeys named the species Homo habilis, the handy man, because near its remains lay the earliest known stone flakes, the Olduvai tools. Each was a deliberate creation, a flake struck from volcanic rock to cut flesh, split bone, or carve wood. For the first time in history, an ape-born creature had reshaped the earth with purpose. But that genius flickered in a brutal context. Studies of 26 fossils suggest an average lifespan of only about 12 years, with 40 to 60% dying before the age of 10. And even that figure is merciful. A best-case glimpse taken from the few who lived long enough to fossilize at all, most probably never reached half that age. Their bones show the cost of survival. Broken limbs, shattered ribs, and teeth ground to powder by grit and hunger. Only 40% had anything resembling healthy enamel. One youth, just 17, had dental damage, twice as severe as a 70-year-old human today. They were small, fragile, and terrified. Yet they dared to create. They struck stone against stone, and in that spark began the story of us. So how did the first toolmaker, the first creature to imagine reshaping its world, live in a reality so cruel that surviving childhood was a miracle? And what does their suffering reveal about the price evolution demanded for intelligence? Before we step back 2 million years into that violent cradle of humanity, hit subscribe and join us here at Beyond Extinction, where science meets storytelling and ancient worlds live again. Two million years ago, the East African Rift Valley was not a garden of beginnings. It was a scar, a raw wound stretching across the continent, torn open by tectonic fire. Volcanoes such as Olduvai Gorge spat ash high into the sky, their eruptions painting the horizon in perpetual dusk. The earth heaved, lakes formed and vanished, and entire forests died in a single lifetime. Here, climate did not change slowly. It convulsed. According to climate scientist Peter de Monocle's 2011 reconstructions, the region swung between drought and flood on a timescale of centuries. For any creature trapped in its grip, survival meant constant adaptation. It was in this chaos that Homo habilis emerged. Their fossils, scattered across Olduvai Gorge, Cubifora, and Sterkfontein, reveal a species trying to live between two worlds, part ape, part human. They still climb trees for safety, yet walk the plains to scavenge what the great hunters left behind. To endure, they learn to use the land itself as a weapon. From volcanic rock, they struck flakes, the Olduvai toolkit, the first deliberate technology on Earth. Each fragment of stone carried purpose: to slice meat from bone, crush marrow, or strip bark for tools and shelter. That single act, stone against stone, was evolution's spark. It allowed them to feed on what others could not, to crack open bones thicker than their fingers. But it also chained them to danger. The moment they stepped down from the safety of trees to find carcasses, they entered the territory of predators far stronger, faster, and smarter than they were. The cradle of humankind was a battlefield, and Homo habilis stood at its center, small, unarmored, and alone. If you saw a Homo habilis today, you might mistake them for a child. Adults stood barely 1.2 meters tall, just under 4 feet, and weighed about 32 kilograms. Their bones were light and brittle, their limbs long and uneven, their chests narrow. Their brains, averaging 500 to 687 cubic centimeters, were less than half the size of those in later humans like Homo erectus, whose cranial volumes reached 1,200 cc. That difference changed everything. A smaller brain meant shorter memory, slower planning, and simpler tools. Where Erectus could imagine tomorrow, Habilis lived only for today. Their skeletons read like autopsies of misfortune. Fractured ribs, splintered wrists, healed femurs bent by ancient breaks. A study of 26 known fossils suggests an average lifespan of around 12 years, with 40 to 60% dying before the age of 10. Yet, those numbers may be optimistic. They represent only the individuals lucky enough to fossilize. Most probably never lived half that long. Few ever saw their own children grow. Even eating carried risk. Their diet of scavenged meat and fibrous roots wore their teeth to stumps. Only 40% of fossils show healthy enamel. The rest reveal catastrophic damage: chipped molars, exposed pulp, abscesses bored deep into bone. One young individual, barely 17 years old, had dental erosion twice as severe as a 70-year-old modern human with untreated decay. Among these remains lies one fossil that tells their story in excruciating detail. Specimen OH7, discovered by the Leakeys in 1960. Its skull was crushed, its jaw abraded, its tiny hand bones still curled as if gripping a stone flake. Forensic analysis shows punctures along the leg and head, wounds inflicted by more than one predator, perhaps a crocodile and a leopard-sized cat. Even in death, the handy man lived up to its name. Bones clenched around the tools that couldn't save it. Pain was constant, and danger never rested. A cracked tooth could fester. A simple cut from a stone edge could turn septic. Their bodies endured everything the earth could deliver: heat, parasites, starvation, fear. They were evolution's toddlers, unsteady, curious, and learning by suffering. And yet somehow, they kept going. Each fragile life pushed the human line one heartbeat further forward. If climate was the architect of hardship, predators were its executioners. 2 million years ago, the African plains were alive with killers, a place where every shadow could end a life. The rivers hid monsters. Beneath the murky water waited Crocodilus anthropophagus, the human eater. At more than 7.5 meters long and weighing 1.5 tons, it could drag a full-grown human down in seconds. 2 juvenile habilis fossils found at Cubifora bear matching bite marks along the legs and feet. its unmistakable calling card. First the pull, then the roll, then silence. Another victim, the OH7 individual itself, tells an even darker story. Deep punctures along its leg and foot match the jaws of a massive crocodile. Gouges across its skull came from a second attacker, a leopard-sized cat. In other words, the fossil that gave Homo habilis its name may have died twice. Dragged, mauled, and devoured by the very ecosystem it tried to master. On land, other horrors ruled. Among the tall grass prowled Meganon, a saber-toothed cat the size of a jaguar, but built like a lion. Its recurved claws could pin a small human instantly, its bite severing arteries in the neck. And larger still was Macaridus Kabir, 400 kilograms of muscle and precision. It didn't chase, it leapt, killing with one crushing embrace. When night fell, the darkness itself began to laugh. The bone-rattling chorus of Pachyrhocutta brevirostris, the giant hyena. With jaws strong enough to splinter elephant bones, it devoured flesh, marrow, and everything in between. To Homo habilis, that sound meant the end had found them again. Scientists have cataloged more than 30 predators that shared their world, each with its own way to kill. So frequent were these encounters that the chemical fingerprints of habiline flesh appear in the bones of ancient cats. They ate us often enough to alter their isotopes. In the rift, the first toolmaker was also one of evolution's favorite meals. Proof that intelligence is no shield against teeth. Even when no beast was near, the earth itself conspired against them. The Rift Valley was a land forever rebuilding and collapsing. Volcanoes coughing ash, earthquakes splitting plains, lakes appearing only to vanish, ash layers at Olduvai Gorge bed. I show eruptions violent enough to blot out the sun for weeks. When the sky cleared, it revealed a new desert. Climate records reconstructed by Dominical, 2011, reveal relentless oscillations. Drought followed by flood, famine followed by disease. As vegetation withered, herds migrated, and Homo habilis followed. Weak, hungry, and exposed. Each drought forced them to scavenge more and hunt less, bringing them closer to the carcasses already claimed by lions and hyenas. The meat they found was raw, crawling with danger invisible to the eye. Without fire, it carried salmonella, E. coli, and parasites that spread through the bloodstream. Every meal was a gamble between starvation and infection. Their bones preserve the cost. Pitted jaws, abscessed molars, and lesions mark chronic disease. Microscopic wear on enamel shows grit and sand ground into every bite. By adolescence, most mouths were ruined, rotting, painful, barely functional. A single toothache could become a death sentence. And the air they breathed was poison too. Volcanic ash scoured lungs and eyes. Water laced with minerals turned alkaline and deadly. Insects thrived in the aftermath. Mosquitoes, tsetse flies, and parasites carrying fever. To live was to endure infection without cure. Famine came in waves. When food ran out, the smallest and weakest, often the children, were the first to die. Of the fossils recovered, nearly half belong to individuals under 10 years old. Their brief lives measure the rhythm of extinction. Hunger, disease, fear, repeat. Yet each generation endured long enough to teach the next where to find marrow, how to chip stone, when to run. They could not master their world, but they learned to outlast it, one desperate season at a time. For Homo habilis, the world's greatest threat was not always claw or fang. Sometimes it was another pair of human eyes staring back from across the fireless dark. They were not alone on the savannas. Between 1.9 and 1.6 million years ago, 3 other human species shared Africa's Rift Valley: the powerful Homo erectus, the broad-faced Homo rudolfensis, and the heavy-jawed Paranthropus boisei. Each fought for the same prey, the same waterholes, the same fragile chance to live another day. But Homo habilis was outmatched. Their brains, 500 to 687 cubic centimeters, were half the size of Homo erectus, which could reach 1,200 cc. Their tools were crude flakes, erectus-shaped symmetrical hand axes, sharp enough to butcher elephants. The leap in intelligence meant a leap in dominance. At Olduvai Gorge, archaeologists found Paranthropus bones carved with deliberate cut marks, evidence of butchery by Homo habilis. Perhaps a kill of desperation, perhaps cannibalism. No one knows. But whatever small victories habilis managed were fleeting. Soon the hunters became the hunted. Standing nearly 1.8 meters tall, Homo erectus was built for pursuit, long-legged, broad-shouldered, and capable of endurance running. They could chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. For the smaller habilines, the open plain was no longer a refuge, but a trap. And there were older shadows still. The giant baboon-like Dinopithecus, 3 times their size and armed with fangs the length of human fingers, roamed the same floodplains. Its fossils lie beside shattered habiline bones, mute testimony to another predator wearing a primate's face. Every direction Homo habilis turned, evolution had already chosen someone stronger, yet they kept trying, scavenging, inventing, fighting the inevitable one cracked stone at a time. In their struggle against rivals, the first lessons of cooperation, courage, and creativity were born. Out of that endless struggle came something miraculous, a thought that could change the world. From the black volcanic beds of Olduvai, they lifted stones and struck them together. Flakes flew, edges sharpened. In that spark of sound and light, a new kind of power appeared. The Olduvai toolkit, humanity's first technology. These tools were simple, pebble choppers and flaked cores, but they held an idea no animal had ever grasped. Objects could be shaped to serve intention. With a single strike, Homo habilis turned geology into survival. Each flake cut meat, split bone, and opened marrow, the richest food on the plains. For the first time, a creature fed not on what it could tear with teeth, but on what it could imagine cutting. Planning, patience, and precision had entered the evolutionary stage. Some archaeologists believe they even built primitive windbreak shelters near Lake Turkana, dated to about 1.7 million years ago. Circles of branches anchored in the earth to shield them from the wind. If true, these were the first walls ever raised against the chaos of nature. But creation had a cost. A sharper tool meant a deeper wound. Without fire or medicine, a single slice could turn fatal. Innovation and danger evolved hand in hand. Still, that spark endured. From crude flakes would come spears, then cities, then spacecraft. From trembling hands hiding from hyenas would grow hands that touched the stars. As paleoanthropologist Rick Potts once said, the greatest human adaptation was not strength. It was a mind built for uncertainty. And no species knew uncertainty better than Homo habilis. They invented not out of mastery, but out of fear. They imagined because imagination was the only weapon they had left. Soon their world would move on without them, but the spark they struck in the dust would never go out. By 1.65 million years ago, the Rift Valley had changed. Forests thinned into grassland, and the open plains belonged to a new species. Homo erectus. Taller, stronger, and armed with twice the brainpower, 1,200 cc of calculation and intent. They hunted in teams, shaped symmetrical Acheulean hand axes, and tamed fire to keep the night at bay. In their shadow, Homo habilis dwindled. The record doesn't end with catastrophe, but with absence. Tool layers thinning, bones disappearing, history forgetting. For years, scientists thought habilis evolved into erectus, that we were their children, but the fossil record tells a harsher story. Evolution moved on without them. While their cousins conquered flame and distance, the handyman remained confined to the cradle that had become its grave. Modern analysis suggests the two species overlapped for centuries. Cousins, not ancestors and heirs. Habilis was not the parent of humanity. It was its prototype, an early draft abandoned for a more resilient design. Yet, calling them failures would miss the point. They survived nearly 700,000 years, longer than Homo sapiens has so far. Their endurance under constant extinction pressure proved that adaptation, not perfection, drives life forward. Their disappearance was quiet, but their legacy profound. Every spark of invention, every act of imagination, began with them. When they vanished, evolution didn't stop. It merely refined what they had started. They were the first to make a world, and the first the world erased. Picture the final night. A storm rages across the ancient plains. Lightning splits the horizon as the last band of Homo habilis huddles beneath twisted branches. One of them lifts a stone, strikes it against another. Spark, sound, darkness again. They do not know it, but they are the end of something extraordinary. From that dying spark, every triumph of humanity descends. The first wheel, the first city, the first spacecraft leaving Earth. All of it traces back to that moment. To a small, frightened creature that learned the world could be shaped. We are not descended from heroes. We are descended from survivors. From beings who endured hunger, terror, disease, and extinction, so that thought itself could continue. Their bones are gone, but their courage lives in every tool we make, every wall we raise, every fire we light against the dark. When you look at your hands, you are seeing the oldest invention of all. The same hands that once trembled in fear, striking stone beneath a blood-red sky. That was Homo habilis, the human species that lived in hell so the rest of us could live it all. If you want to keep exploring the forgotten ages of our planet, from the monsters that ruled the seas to the humans who fought extinction on land, subscribe to Beyond Extinction, where science meets storytelling and ancient worlds live again.